Good morning. It's 9 o'clock and time for the March 22nd meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County to meet. We will begin with an invocation led by Jeffrey Smith, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Wesley Davis.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we can come and conduct the business of the county. Lord, I ask for wisdom and strength for the gentlemen sitting on the dais, that they make the decisions that glorify you and benefit the citizens of this county. Lord, during this Holy Week, I'm reminded of your statement in the Sermon on the Mount where you said that we are the salt of the earth, Lord, and I take that to mean that you want us to thirst and show you so that people thirst for you. Lord, I pray that you will forgive me for wherever and I know that I have sinned. Lord, we pray for all those in Brussels right now and the severe attacks that just occurred this morning. Lord, we pray for those families. And Lord, I ask a special blessing on all the first responders, law enforcement, and military around the world that serve this country. Protect them and bring them back home safely. These things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me to pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith and Commissioner Davis. Move on to item number 4, additions and deletions to the agenda. Gentlemen, any additions or deletions?
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. We'll now move on to proclamations and presentations. And we have a proclamation and retirement award honoring Terry Cook on his retirement from the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Public Works and Bridge, for his 23 years of service. Mr. Cook, if you'd come on up, bring your wife, and if you want the Public Works Director with you, he's welcome to come. Or for the start off at just the podium. So this is why Chris came. He wants to see exactly how it's done, the procedure, so he asked me. So this is a great opportunity for all of us to thank you very much for your work and your service to Indian River County. We very much appreciate it. We understand, as the county administrator has said from this dais many times, that it's the employees of Indian River County, such as yourself, which make this the great county is. So I thank you very much for your years of service, and I'm very happy to read this proclamation honoring Terry Cook on his retirement from Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Public Works, Road and Bridge Division. Whereas Terry Cook retired from Indian River County Road and Bridges Division effective March 31st, 2016. And whereas Terry Cook began his career with Indian River County as Road and Bridge Superintendent on April 5th, 1993, and continued in that capacity until his retirement. And whereas Terry Cook managed the Road and Bridge Division, the largest division within the Public Works Department, during a period when roadside beautification, median landscaping, and irrigation increased dramatically, resulting in greater responsibility for the road and bridge crews. For several years, he also provided oversight of the Fleet Maintenance Division. During the 2004 hurricane season, when the county was devastated by Hurricanes Francis and Jean, Terry Cook oversaw vegetation clearing, debris removal, and road repair efforts. In addition, he perfected a method of applying asphalt millings onto dirt roads, which resulted in a much improved driving service, less maintenance, and a higher quality of life for residents. And whereas Terry Cook has served this county and the public with distinction and selflessness, during his 23 years of service, he was dedicated and his work was greatly appreciated by the employer, citizens, and co-workers alike. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board applauds Terry Cook's efforts on behalf of the county, and the Board wishes to express their appreciation for the dedicated service he has given to Indian River County for the last 23 years. And be it further proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners and staff extend heartfelt wishes for success in his future endeavors. Adopted this 22nd day of March 2016 and signed by the humble chairman. And I'm also happy to read the second plaque, which I'm sure your wife is going to have in the kitchen, that you share every day. This is to certify that Terry Cook is hereby presented this retirement award for outstanding performance and faithful service to Indian River County Board of County Commissioners for 23 years of service on this 31st day of March 2016. Thank you very much, and would be happy to hear from you.
Yeah, I want to thank the board. 23 years of enjoyment. I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I appreciate you for putting up with me at times, and I guess I'm also happy that retirement is finally here, so that's all I have to say.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Terry, it's, over the past 12 years, it's been a pleasure to work with you specifically. In District 1, we've got more dirt roads than anything I know of, and there's never been a time whenever I would call Chris, and Chris would get in touch with Public Works, and through your efforts to get out there and make them as passable as we possibly could, even when we get 9 inches of rain in the month of January. But more than that, too, and just listening to public's concerns and ways to address and make the situations better. Having the experience of the fair for the last week, those improvements on the north side have, it was simply just listening to those that were utilizing it and coming up with some good ideas. And so you're going to be missed, but at the same time, we certainly do want to thank you for your years of service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Chairman? Yes, I'd like to just thank you for the ingenuity behind the millings program that we have. One, it reduced cost, improves the passage of many roadways in the county, and it's now we kind of take it for granted that they're I don't want to say they're everywhere, but there's a lot of them out there, and it just really enhances getting around town in some of these areas where you're not taking the primary road, you're taking one of the secondary roads, and the millings just makes that passage so much easier and much more convenient for so many of the residents in the county to travel. So thank you, and enjoy your time in retirement. And you can come and watch the meetings now from the audience. We have some folks here on the right that actually have reserved seating every meeting. And but stop in and say hello every once in a while. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Terry, when I was a deputy, we used to call Road and Bridge and take care of signs that were like this, that went horizontal somehow. And we had minor little things that we would call up, and Road and Bridge took care of that. And I want to thank you for all of that. But my appreciation got so deep throughout the hurricanes, and then when I served on this board, to know that when I can go to Chris Mora and then Jim Davis and say, we have an issue, I have a constituent concern, we have to address it, it was done. And the word, when Terry Cook was mentioned, it was over. Job completed. I want to thank you because of what you've done. It's been mentioned about the roadways. Thank you for perfecting that and making our jobs easier in order to deal with the constituent concerns and ensure that we have a greater public safety. So thank you very much, and I sincerely hope that you enjoy your retirement and fish on.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore, any words today?
I'd like to say a few words too. Terry's done a tremendous job for us. We couldn't ask for a better road and bridge superintendent. He brought road and bridge to a new level, and I want to thank him. He's made my job a lot easier, and he's done a tremendous job for the citizens. So enjoy retirement, Terry.
Just a couple of words. You know, Terry managed our largest division within Public Works, Road and Bridge, and every day that means that he's got more than 80 employees under his supervision, permanent and temporary employees as well. And if you look back over the years and you see his accomplishments in modernizing Road and Bridge, modernizing our equipment, modernizing the way we managed our crews, you could see his imprint on almost everything out there. And one thing that I really appreciate with Terry is I never went to him with a problem that he didn't have an answer for. Mm-hmm. He always was able to say, he never said, I can't do that or we can't do that. He always had a means to get the job done. And as a department head, that's very much appreciated because you know that he's a go-to guy. And I'm gonna miss him a lot. We're county's going to miss him a lot.
Do you have a concrete driveway?
Terry, do you want a picture?
Sure.
We need somebody with a camera for this.
Scott, do you have a, oh, Scott's got one.
No reason to exclude you.
Terry, move a little bit to the right. Terry, move a little bit to the right.
Thank you again, Terry.
We'll now have the presentation of a proclamation designating the day of April 12th, 2016 as Equal Pay Day. Commissioner Zork will present this to Susan Jones, Linda Barker, and Lois Miles. Come on up, ladies.
Yes, if you'd like to come up to the podium, I'll read the proclamation, and then if you'd like to share a few words, that would be wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
This is a proclamation designating the day of April 12, 2016 as Equal Pay Day. Whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Equal Pay Act, women, especially minority women, continue to suffer the consequences of unequal pay. And whereas, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, women working full-time year-round in 2015 typically earn 21% of what men earn, including little change in progress in the equal pay. And whereas in 2009, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was signed into law, which gives back to their employees their day in court to challenge a pay gap, and now we must pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would amend the Equal Pay Act by closing loopholes and improving the law's effectiveness. And whereas, according to one estimate, college-educated women working full-time earn more than $500,000 less than their male peers do over the course of a lifetime. Whereas nearly 4 in 10 mothers are primary breadwinners in their household, and nearly 2/3 are primary or significant earners, making equal pay critical to families' economic security. And whereas, according to the Fight for Equal Pay, a state roadmap for Florida, published by AAUW and updated in September 2015, median earnings for men in Florida were $40,971 compared to $34,768 for women, an earning ratio of just 85%, or 6th out of all states in the District of Columbia. And whereas fair pay strengthens the security of families today and eases future retirement costs while enhancing the American economy. And whereas Tuesday, April 12, 2016 symbolizes a time in 2016 when the wages paid to American women catch up to the wages paid to men from the previous year. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the day April 12, 2016 be designated as Equal Pay Day in Indian River County, and the board encourages all citizens to recognize their full value of women's skills and contributions to the labor force, and to further encourage businesses to conduct an internal pay evaluation and to ensure women are being paid fairly and equally, adopted this 22nd day of March 2016. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the Indian River County Board of Commissioners and for proclaiming April 12th Equal Pay Day in the Indian River County, Florida. My name is Suzanne Jones, and I'm a member of the Vero Beach chapter of the American Association of University Women. AAUW was founded in 1881 for the advancement of women and has fought for issues such as voting rights, education, health care, equal employment, and equal pay for 135 years. It is astounding to me that I find myself in the year of 2016 standing on a public platform still discussing these same issues, and today more specifically equal pay for women and the pending Paycheck Fairness Act. Many people are still unaware that this pay discrepancy still exists, even though there has been a long history of legislation designed to fix this issue. Today, women still earn, as you mentioned, an average of 79 cents on a dollar compared to their male counterparts in the same job. That's a 21% difference in pay. Therefore, it takes a woman in the same job until April 12th of this year, of the following year, to earn what her male colleague earned in 12 months. Women of color have an even larger discrepancy in pay. And according to the Institute for Women's Policy, it will take women another 44 years until 2058 to finally reach pay parity if biased business decisions and legislative progress continue at the same rate. Now, I figured that out for my granddaughter, who is now 15 years old. And in 44 years, she's going to be 59 years old and coming upon the retirement of her own career. That just seems astounding. State and national equal pay day activities have been around for many years. So our chapter decided to create an equal pay day awareness right here in Vero Beach. We want to have a little fun while we increase public awareness and advocate for women's equal pay. We're sponsoring a promotion on April 12th, encouraging local businesses to offer women a 21% discount on qualifying purchases. The discount can be on a dessert or a cup of coffee, on their sale rack, or on their entire purchase, whatever that merchant feels that they can afford for one day. There will be posters like this one up all over town in the businesses that we have contacted, and I'm sure that women will be encouraged to shop in stores that support them. Our goal is to increase awareness and advocate for equal pay for women. As it states in our proclamation, we urge the citizens of Indian River County, Florida, to recognize the full value of women's skills and contributions to the labor force, and to further encourage businesses to conduct an internal pay evaluation to ensure women are being paid fairly and equally. So I hope our local promotion will create some interest and provide information that women take the time to shop in Vero Beach businesses on April 12th and receive their discount. Please thank them for their participation and show your support for our local businesses. Our Vero Beach AAUW chapter thanks you very much for this opportunity to speak to you and for your proclamation participation. And thank you for your time and your interest. I have brought some information that I would like to give each of you, if that is okay. This is some statistics about the gender pay gap by state. Can I approach?
Yes.
Okay. By state, and tells where Florida is in all of this, if you want to pass those down. AAUW also has published The Simple Truth on Gender Pay Gap that you might find interesting to read. And I've also brought something for each of you that if on
Ma'am, it'd be best if you could go back to the podium so that we can get a record from the
Yes.
clerk. Thank you.
If each of you on April 12th would care to stick one of these on your jacket, It says, pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, and this one says, I am the face of pay equity. So this is another way of supporting the proclamation that you have agreed to. So it would be very nice if you would do that.
I will note while you're there that Florida does much better than about 85% of the states, it looks like, 90% of the states. So we're getting closer than most of the states in the union.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and be happy to have you come up for the proclamation.
Like to do a picture in the middle here?
Yes.
Those are extra. Okay. Right there in the middle. Thank you.
Suzanne, here's a couple of them. I passed them.
Commissioners, if it's all right with you, I think that to advertise this a little bit about the discount on coming up would be appropriate to put on our website for a little bit of advertisement for the movement.
If you would give us information, we'll put so as women can know, we'll put it on our website where the businesses are giving the discount. If you'll send it to our staff, Scott's here, we'll put it on our website. We'll also put it so it'll be noticed. And if you have something, we can put it in this building too.
And how do we do that?
Scott will.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we have information items, and there's one information item which I'll bring up, and that is Daniel Clark is retiring after 23 years of service, and I'd like to thank this opportunity to thank Mr. Clark for his years of service to Indian River County. Moving on to the consent agenda. Gentlemen, anybody wish to pull something? I'd like to pull B just for a short discussion. Anybody from the audience wish to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Gentlemen, on item B, this is an update on the progress of the West Wabasso Phase 2 sewer and the East Gifford Drainage Project. Just bring it to the attention as something else that particularly the utility department is doing to help with the TMDL nitrogen phosphorus problem, but also to help with a disadvantaged neighborhood up in Wabasso. I thank everybody, member of staff, for their work on this. It's a $1.3 million project which will provide conversions from septic tanks to sewage for approximately 45 families. So thank you very much for that. I'll entertain a motion to approve the item.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now we move to constitutional officers and government agencies, and we have Jeffrey Smith, the clerk of the court, who's here to give us an update on the collection of tourist tax with Airbnb. Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Before you is a contract that we have secured a draft copy. What I'd like to do now is thank publicly my internal auditor, Ed Halsey, for making contact with Airbnb, and also your staff, Bill DeBrawl, in the county attorney's office for negotiating this contract. I'd like to call Bill up now to go through a little bit of the detail on the contract. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. I echo Mr. Smith's congratulations of Ed Halsey and his work on this matter as well. It makes my job a lot easier negotiating a contract. Airbnb is an online vacation rental company. They're based in San Francisco. They've been operating for a couple of years. Their business plan is a little bit different than most vacation rentals. With Airbnb, excuse me, you have the option of just booking a night similar to a hotel. It can be at a condominium where you'd be the only occupant, or you could actually book a night in somebody's house or apartment and stay there with them, more along the lines of a hostel type of agreement. Airbnb has come to different municipalities and counties in Florida and offered to collect their tourist tax for them. What they've agreed to and what this agreement sets forth is that they will go ahead and add an extra screen that will pop up for an Indian River County rental. And that screen will have the sales tax and the bed tax added to it. There's no way that a participant or a host for Airbnb can opt out of this. It will be added automatically. Any person that will be a guest staying in that will just have that filled out just like any other online purchase where you pay the sales tax. This will pop up automatically and cannot be circumvented by either the host or the guest. In exchange for the collection of this, the county would have to agree to forego collection of past sales tax and tourist rental tax, or you know, the hotel tax. It seems like it would be a fair trade-off as far as future income stream coming in and forgiving the past debt that might be out there, with a good question of how we would ever try and collect something like that. So the agreement is there for your approval. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Commissioner Zork.
Yes, Bill, how does this model the Pinellas County agreement, since they were the first county in the state, and that's when I became aware of it and met with the clerk's office and Jeff Smith, and looking at this as an opportunity to have if we have to have short-term rentals, at least let's make sure we get our fair share of the tax. But is this similar to the Pinellas agreement?
Very similar, yes. You just move a few paragraphs around and it's about the same agreement.
Good. And do we know of any other online providers that we can now reach out to secondarily to try to forge some other agreements? And I'm seeing a nod to your right here.
Yes, we become aware of some other ones. HomeAway.com is one of them, and Ed is currently investigating them as well as trying to get a hold on some other types of those. But HomeAway.com is the one that we're going after now.
And if I'm going to follow up on that, I mean, according to some work by Jason Brown, he indicates that the tourist tax for Airbnb could represent about $15,000 of revenue a year. The additional sales tax would be about $25,000 a year.
Right.
And if you extrapolated that over the universe of short-term rentals, which some people have said of about 700, then the total tax take for Indian River County would be $400,000. But then the economic activity in the county is significantly greater than that.
Correct.
So, Jeff, you've got your work cut out for
Yep.
you. We expect in the next fiscal year you'll get the full $400,000 for us, and we look forward to that.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, any other questions?
No, very nice job. Way to be proactive in this.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Zork, seconded by Commissioner Fleischer. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. DeBarr. Thank you, Mr. Smith. We now move to public items. We have a request to speak from citizen Wesley Davis, who is now moving to the podium. Good morning, Mr. Davis. Name and address for the record, please.
Wesley Davis, 7001 84th Avenue, Vero Beach.
Where's that? Is that still in Indian River County?
It is. It's at District 1, as a matter of fact, in case you're wondering.
Just barely in the county.
That's it. Commissioners, thank you very much. Just wanted to address this board in a different light versus from commissioner to commissioner. I wanted to address you on an issue that I think that is coming that is very serious, and that is it has to do with the all aboard Florida disaster zones. And the all aboard Florida disaster zones is 1,000 feet on either side of the railroad tracks that run right through the heart of Indian River County. And I just wanted to address this to you today as an expert in this real estate deemed by the state of Florida, and tell you what I see, what I fear may be coming. I think we need to be proactive in this, and the reason why is many realtors right now are disclosing and having to disclose or be held liable for not disclosing the effects of the high-speed rail and the double tracking that's coming through our community. And I think it creates a major problem that we need to address. And there's been some quotes about how it's been awfully difficult to do a study on what's going to happen. Well, I disagree with that, and we must be proactive. If you look at if we could get these maps right here on the wall that I have up, these are old maps from 2011. Basically, what I've put up there is gives you the opportunity to see where the rails run, and it's really through the breadbasket and the heart and soul of our community. According to the Martin study that was announced the plan was announced in 2012, there was an immediate property loss, according to the property appraiser, Laurel Kelly, down in Martin County. And so she proactively reached out to the Department of Revenue and asked for permission and to spend the funds with Florida Atlantic University to do the study. And I read that study. And I have a copy, as a matter of fact, of the executive summary. It's very easy reading, but very intriguing. And the reason why I find it so intriguing is because there are so many similarities in Indian River County versus Martin County. Martin County, for example, is 21 miles long. Indian River County is 22 miles long. Martin County has an inlet at the north end of theirs, so do we. Martin County seat is at the south end, so is Vero, at the south end of Indian River County. Martin County has Jensen Beach, and we have Sebastian. Martin County has Indiantown, and we have Fellsmere. And the similarities are uncanny, to the point that I really think that you could draw a correlation between what Martin County has already done and where we could be also. And in the executive summary, it said that basically they studied 13,332 properties. Those were residential. They didn't do any commercial, as I understand it. The smallest homes got hit the hardest, the homes that were 1,532 feet or less, square feet or less. The greatest impact on it, according to the study, was within 400 feet. But again, it did go out all the way to 1,000 feet. But the difference before the announcement and that versus after the announcement of 400 feet from the rail was $16,681 loss in value. If it was more than 400 feet away from the rail, it was $10,502. I got an email the other day after the person was killed. Two people were killed down in Stewart. And the gentleman's name is Larry. It's public record, but I won't mention his last name. Anybody wants a copy of it, obviously it's public record. But he talked about how it seemed like every half hour on the half hour, the the noise was blowing. And it's probably blowing, just in my opinion, because the tracks were probably closed and they had to make up for lost time after the accident in Martin County. To me, that's indicative of exactly what's coming to Indian River County once All Aboard Florida gets in place. It is a property disaster zone, 2,000 feet wide, 22 miles long. And we haven't had anybody address this from the appraiser's office. We're 2 years behind. We should have started addressing this from the draft environmental impact statement. I also feel that we could be having a hidden shortfall in future tax revenues that's not being considered for the county, school board, cities, and all governing agencies. So the solution that I would like to bring today is this: be proactive. I ask that we consider a similar study to what Martin County's done. Don't need dollars to do it. What we need is information. We use the separate study to create alternative evaluations to addressing All Aboard Florida's negative effects on property values and the tax rolls. 3, we've lost ground when we had nobody responsible for assessed values in Indian River County step forward. I applaud the commission, and you know I see eye to eye with you, on the opposition that we continue to do in helping the residents of this community. Number 4, I ask that we authorize our GIS systems, the counties, to identify properties that are established in the All Aboard Florida disaster zone and notify the affected parties of possible actions and effects on their property. And number 5 is a quick
quick back of the envelope calculation suggests that up to $2 billion with a B dollars worth of real estate is affected by this disaster zone. And just taking a 16%, if that holds true like it did on the Martin County study, we could be looking at $320 million worth of taxable value being destroyed. Just in Indian River County's budget alone, doing the millage and doing that math equation, it could mean $1 million this year. So that's really what I wanted to say here today. We can take the lead. I can take it from here. I just need a little bit of help from GIS to identify the parcels. And that's all I'm asking. You have any questions?
Thank you very much, Citizen Davis.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, we have a request to speak from Bo Holland. Holland, welcome.
Mr. Chairman?
Don't we get any public comment on that?
No, well, at the end of it, we can address it after the rest of the public comment.
Good morning. Thank you for hearing me today. My name's Bo Holland, and I'm here today. I bought a house, a foreclosure.
Sir, your address too, please, for the record.
I'm sorry?
Your address also, please, for the record.
My name's Bo Holland. The address for this house is 3348 Burlington Place, Millstone.
Thank you.
I bought this home beginning of the year at a foreclosure auction, and I didn't realize there's a $900 lien on it, water lien, and evidently that was a 10% water lien, and it's a little over $9,000. The house has been empty for 8 years, and the bill hasn't been paid, and I'm just asking to see if there's any way that this water bill can be reduced, because it's obviously more than half of it's probably late fees, interest that keeps occurring. The water hasn't been running necessarily. It's just a lot of late fees and interest. And I'm looking to keep the home. I'm looking to move into it. So I've been working the past 2 months on fixing it, and my next step is to try to get this water bill resolved.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Do you do this professionally, or you don't buy and flip? And
No, sir.
This is a home that you bought at the courthouse steps, and you just want to move into it?
Yes, sir. Yep. This is the home I'm going to keep.
I have one other question too. Did you get title insurance for this?
Not yet. No.
So
You wouldn't get it at the clerk's sale. I mean, you could, but you wouldn't get it at the clerk's sale like as a typical transaction. He bought this at the court, literally or figuratively, at the courthouse steps.
Did you use a title company?
No, I didn't. No.
Did you use an attorney?
No, sir.
Did you pay far less than market value for that residence?
I believe so. Yes, sir.
For what I understand, also
You realize when you endeavor into that purchase that there are some perils known as judgments against, liens against the property?
Yes, sir.
And,
Yep.
and you were not aware of them?
I was aware there was a bill of like $800 to $900, but after I purchased the home, and that must have been 10%. I didn't realize that it was just 10%.
I believe the usage of one of those professionals would have clearly identified. I have the full faith in the professionals that serve Indian River County in the capacity of title searchers, title companies, and attorneys. And I believe that it probably would have been identified, and it would have probably helped you in your purchase decision.
You're right.
But
You're absolutely right.
you did not do that.
I didn't do that, no, sir.
Mr. DeBraw's up
Okay.
at the podium. If it's okay,
Yes.
we'll.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. This is a matter where the foreclosure occurred. I believe there were even 2 different suits that were filed. One back in 2010, 2011, that was dismissed by the court for lack of prosecution. The second one came through and foreclosed out. The county was never named as a party in this matter, so there'd really be no way for this gentleman on the face of the foreclosure suit to see that there was an underlying lien for utilities. And as you recall, our lien takes priority, so what I assume happened in this case is that the bank never served us, never brought us into the suit because they know that our utility lien would survive.
But Bill, if someone had come in and checked with the utility department before they bought a piece of property, they would have identified an amount on there. Okay, thank you very much.
And we've had a lot of these. We've had a lot of people that have had to pay. Everyone else has had to pay. It's a lien. We pay to have it recorded for this purpose in our utility department.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Davis.
I'm going to float a motion, see if it goes anywhere. There's some of the base capacity charges that are tied up into this. Is something that we have very seldom, I don't ever remember doing anything as far as alleviating the base capacity charges that's responsible for running the day-to-day operations of the utilities. It has not been uncommon for us to waive the penalties and interest. And so I'm going to just go ahead and float that as a motion to see what happens. I would also require that he pays the base capacity charges within 30 days.
I'd like to say one thing. It's not uncommon. It is uncommon for us to do that.
Okay, I'll just begin by saying that it's my understanding that we don't take motions under public discussion. So if you want to make a motion to have staff come back with a report, we could do that, I think. But
I don't know where you're going to shave. I'm sorry.
I do have a question. The property that you've purchased on Burlington Place, that's the address in question, right?
Yes, sir.
How is that title registered? Or has it been owned long enough to be registered under your name?
I believe it's registered in my name now. I have a friend helping me with this.
Okay, because I see under Bow West and Holland, there's a number of other properties that are listed. Not sure if it's the same one, but I don't see this address registered there. So, do you own other properties in the county?
I own 2 lots and another house in this county. Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that the 19th Avenue Southwest and I see there's 2 19th Avenue. One's the vacant lot and one looks like a improved property.
Correct. Yes,
okay.
sir.
But this one, and I know sometimes recording takes a little while between transaction and that, so that may be why the third one is not showing up there so far.
Right. Okay.
Right.
well, there is the motion, which I believe is inappropriate, but I'll see if there's a
I
second.
didn't get a second yet.
Can you state the motion again?
Just basically to waive the penalties and interest, have him pay the base capacity charges due and pay it within 30 days.
Mr. Chairman, if I have a question on that. Well, we've done the policy for waiving penalties and interest on the program that we had and then expired, then we renewed it again, the amnesty program. How did that function, Dylan, if you could give me a short overview? Is that similar to what Commissioner
In
Davis
terms
is
of how did it
proposing?
function in terms of our success rate or just the
Function of
procedural
what
aspect
portion
to
of
it?
those bills did we collect?
Oh, gosh, I'd have to defer to the county
Or not
administrators.
portion, but when people came in and paid under the amnesty program, what fees were waived to help clear up some of these past accounts?
Mr. Burke.
Yeah, for the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. The Amnesty Program Commissioner was done twice, but that was for ERUs that were never connected to the system.
Okay.
That were reserve ERUs. We did have some success where some folks were able to take advantage of that. Most recently was the 4 or 5 month period in 2015 that ended August of 2015. But those were reserve ERUs that had never been
Okay,
connected.
not connected
Which would be different
ERUs,
than this
okay.
situation.
But if I remember correctly, what the amnesty did was it did away with the penalties and interest as long as they paid the basic facility charges.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner,
Question for Councilor DeBrawl, because I know he was a bit involved with this in the past.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilor.
Well,
When a bank takes possession of a residence, when it's defaulted upon, the charges, the usage charges, then will revert back to the bank, and the bank will then continue to have those meter charges paid through the bank customarily?
when the bank or someone else takes ownership of the property, that's when the bank would then be responsible for maintenance of the property, paying the water bill, et cetera, et cetera.
And the bank took possession just a few years ago, correct?
No, the bank never took possession of this property. The gentleman purchased the property literally on the courthouse steps or, at auction. What happens in a foreclosure is After you get a final judgment of foreclosure, an auction, a sale is set by the clerk, or by the court, I should say. It's advertised. Anyone that wants to come and bid is welcome to come and bid. Now it's done online. Historically, it was always done at the clerk's office, and if there would be no bid, the bank would acquire the property by default. In this case, this is the gentleman that went ahead and bid at the auction for the property and was the successful high bidder.
And the previous owner stopped paying the connection fees somewhere back in 2008, though.
Yes. And I think this place has been abandoned for how long?
For eight years.
Yeah.
And there's homeless people living in it.
This is just a walk away.
Just my point, though, is you own other properties in the county, and you're familiar with connection fees and how our utilities department works and what is to be expected. And if a meter exists, that means the clock is running and the meter is running as well. Even if there's no water going through it, it exists, and there's a $26 fee per month for the existence of the connection. It's a maintenance fee. So I think that it would be far-fetched to think that these fees did not exist.
I think he anticipated that. I think that doesn't come surprised that that I think that it was $9,000 is what threw him for a loop whenever the recorded lien said something other than $9,000. There was an $800 lien on it.
Yeah, I thought that was the $800 or $900 lien, water lien. That's what I didn't
recorded.
realize it was. That was just 10% of it. It was
and it's his fault. You're right. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And if I felt like it was somebody that bought 3 of these and that kind of stuff and did it for a living, that's why I asked him right off the bat. I mean, anybody that's buy these houses and flips them, they should know. And quite frankly, you should know. But going back to that base capacity charge, we hold pretty true to that everybody pays that. And so that's about as far as I can go for you, is to the base capacity charges, that you'd be responsible for what those are. And the penalties and interest is something that is what it is.
Sure.
The dilemma I find is in that other people check and pay this. They when they're bidding on them on the courthouse steps, they check with us. They say, okay, this is owed. I'll bid on it based on this. Yeah. This is owed to the county. This is owed. These are the liens. They do their due diligence, and we have a lot of that. We've had a lot of that in a few, and everyone's paid. Most people have paid on the courthouse steps. So that's where I feel for those that are now. You're going to have all these people that are coming in and say, why me? Why do I not have to pay?
If this was a customary conventional sale, I would say, well, we can blame it. The title company should have identified this, or you should have identified it, or you should have checked with utilities. Or an attorney might have disclosed this.
Right.
And not might have. I'm sure they would. But this was the courthouse steps purchase, and when you engage in those type of endeavors, you get that deep dish discount, but it's also caveat emptor. I mean, you have to look at what the disadvantages are. And this is one of those. It may still be a good deal with all of the collateral costs incurred. I trust it is. Otherwise, you probably would not have done it.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Well, at this point, we have the motion from Commissioner Davis.
We make motions on public speech.
Well, he made it. I don't think it's appropriate, but he made it, so.
Well,
I have a question.
They got a second.
Well,
But that's what I'm.
Yeah, I mean, we can move on.
I think a second is coming from this side of the table, so I was
okay.
looking for
One other question, Dylan, from a future standpoint, depending on how this gets resolved or if it stays the way it is, obviously we would be setting a path for future appeals of other people that might find themselves in the same situation. Would that be a fair statement?
Well, currently, right now, what we have under our code is under Section 201.08. We do have a process by which the utility department can waive a delinquency or overcharges, but it's got to be payment in full of all the underlying charges and delinquency charges, and that such would work a hardship to the customer and that such waiver is determined to be in the best interest of the county, and then such waiver then would result in immediate payment of all the underlying charges and delinquency charges which are not waived. So we do have a process already in place to discuss the issue. Obviously, if the utility director makes a decision, it can be appealable to the county administrator from there. But one of the issues I have is essentially, it sounds like I'm not sure even if this process or initial evaluation has really been done at this point.
And is the definition of hardship the same threshold that you have to reach in a zoning variance where the hardship is not caused by the applicant? In other words, hardship, is it financial hardship, or is it, in this case, I would think that this would not meet the threshold of hardship. It is a big expense, and that portion's a hardship per se, but it's not a hardship that you typically, that bar you have to reach when someone's applying for a variance. It's a different type of hardship interpretation.
To the best of my knowledge, we don't necessarily define hardship in the code, and certainly something we could work through on the issue. But I mean, it sounds like the two would be different standards. And I know what you're talking about in terms of the variance process, where it's got to be an undue hardship, and you go through a whole bunch of analysis as whether a variance is approved. But I think the code is clear. I mean, there's got to be a hardship that's demonstrated by that customer. And I think there would be an aspect of that of sort of, not for lack of a better word off the top of my head, fault involved in that analysis.
I will say that how we apply that policy is, let's say you have your water cut off, and let's say a renter, and they come in, before we file the lien. Once we file the lien, we waited a long time. My concern with this is, we usually we don't waive these, I'll be honest, we usually don't. Because of the simple thing is, we've got people who step up and pay per our ordinance. That's why you have the rate ordinances, that's why you have the rules, or to go by it. And it just makes it too, especially, my staff had got under pressure politically, especially at an election year, to waive stuff. And I don't want to put my staff in that place.
Okay, at this point.
One last question. So we're at roughly a $9,000 bill, and if you multiplied out 8 years at 12 payments, that's 96 times. What is it, $27.50 base facility charge?
I think it's $34 a month.
$34, $35.
$34, $35. Did you get sewer with this too?
About $26.42 a month.
Okay, so I just want to see what is the difference between, okay, so that's $2,500 roughly versus $9,000. So, all right, thank you.
I'm scared of the door you're going to open. Everyone else is buying them.
One last time. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. So we'll move on to the next public discussion item, which is a request to speak from the Gifford Economic Development. I'm sorry, your item, there was no second for it, so your item is over. We did not waive it.
Okay, thank you.
A request to speak from the Gifford Economic Development Council. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm Wanda Scott, 4306 26th Avenue. I have a junk drive. Do you have someone to operate the? Okay. Thank you.
Scott.
Jason's coming up.
Do you have someone to operate the, or can I?
Someone's coming up.
Okay.
Let me see if I can do it.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Duvall.
And I have, I got a couple more. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Got a little bit of cold weather. That's rough on the joints. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to come before you again. I'm one of the board members of the Gifford Economic Development Council. And one of the concerns was the Gifford infrastructure. And I came in at the tail end of Commissioner Wesley Davis about the property and the value, the deterioration, all of the things. Well, those are some of the things that we have a concern with. I was here before, a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about the infrastructure. And I'm here because I know in order to have an economy or to have a village, you have to have the right elements, and Gifford's missing those things. So I want to make sure it's clear, and I want to bring before, it's not enough that I say, but I show you in pictures and actual videos. Most of the pictures start, I think, around the 14th of February, 2016, and then I took some pictures as early as yesterday, which was March, what's it, 2021? So before I start this, and I want that to be my trademark this year, that I'm giving gifts. And Commissioner Davis, I have to point him out because I bother him a lot. And anytime I swing on his door or I grab him by the hand and I says, hey, I really need your help. This part is pretty dangerous in our community. It's a safety, it's a this, it's a that. Can you help me out? Commissioner Davis, get on the phone. He makes, within 24 hours, our area is out of danger. Not resolved, but out of danger. That makes a difference. The Gifford, the Gifford Historic Society are sponsoring the Gifford birthday. And we produced these shirts, and I like to share the shirt with Commissioner Wesley Davis, and I'd like for you to show it. And if this shirt is too small, I can reduce it and get you a smaller shirt. Could someone take that up there? Can you show off your shirt? Take that up there to Commissioner Wesley Davis with the beautiful red tie. Could you show the public? It says, Happy Birthday Gifford, established 1896. You like that? That's for you. Do you need one smaller? Okay. We notice you're losing a lot of weight and you look gorgeous. And I'm picking on Commissioner Davis because we've had a lot of areas in Gifford, infrastructural-wise. It takes a village to raise children, but it takes a safe village to raise children. And I'm very thankful to Commissioner Davis in responding. Last year I called on you a lot. I did call on you, Mr. Beard, but he's always just so, I probably have a shirt for you too, a Gifford shirt. I'm gonna get one for you. But anyway, not to prolong the time, this is not favoritism or anything. I want you to know this is not favoritism, but he does a lot for us. He's not in my district, but I can swing on his door at any time or call him. And he says, Ms. Scott, let me look into it. Let's take care of. I also want to give kudos to Commissioner Zork, the people, your what is it, Public Works or Chris Moore's guys have come out. I see the blue paint and I see the little flags. So you have responded in a manner that's appropriate. You're making some difference, and that is important to me. as a, just a moment. Now, everything that I'm sharing with you today, like I told you a couple of weeks ago, that we are forming arms in the, under the Gifford Economic Development in order to get our area turned around. The latest one is the Public Safety Advisory Commission Corporation of Gifford, Florida. And that's where we're going to be sending reports of safety violations, not only just to Indian River County, but to other agencies to assist if we need fundings or whatever to get our area back to a safe and viable community. So this is the latest one, and I was thankful of Sunbiz able to get that out quickly. It is, hang on just a second here. Okay, what I'd like to show you, these are some pictures. The infrastructure right now, or the zoning, encompass 41st, 43rd, and I think this morning 49th is still, or part of 49th is still part of the infrastructure of Gifford. And these pictures here, like I said, they're from February 18th through yesterday. And we just, myself, this young lady named Kayla, she's 15 years old. We went around Gifford and we got out the car and we went up to some of the areas. From the road, you really can't see them. You really have to get out. And then you walk up and it's kind of shocking because we saw a lot of infrastructural stress cracks, a lot of the culverts that were in badly need of repairs or actually removal and put in new culverts. And here's the word, everything leads back to the ocean, the waterways, the drainage. And that's why I'm here. It's not everything is leading back to the ocean. Somewhere it's blocked, or it's clogged, or it's no drainage at all. And those are the things that impacts, or those are the elements that impacts the infrastructure. Whether an infrastructure is viable to a community. I even went to the sheriff department. You might see some toes here and there. I don't, that's me. So don't get excited. I went to various areas, the sheriff department, I went to the community center, I went to the Victory Park, areas where there's a lot of public movement, a lot of children. And I says, let's see what the infrastructures look like. I know these areas are at least up to par. I was a little disappointed. Now, we can do a quick slide presentation, or I can narrate it. Would you? Okay, what he's about to show you is 49th Street, and those are the original concrete bags. And the research I did, those were put in 1926, 27, 1928, around that time frame. Those are the original concrete bags. And those support the culverts. And then we have the original galvanized steel pipes that are supporting the culvert. And when I say culvert, that's the piping. A lot of this is 49th Street. It's either able to drain, or either the pipes are so decomposed. That's a nice one. But we have some pipes that have no bottom. Some pipes that are missing the sides. We're talking 5, 6 feet pipes in the diameter of those pipes. What does that do to the infrastructure? What does that do to the property value? What does that do to the safety of these children? Now that's a prefab, and I counted about 8 of those. But most of those were galvanized steel pipes that were badly, not decomposed, but just eroded. This is our infrastructure. Now, the question is, did the Gifford people, citizens, pay taxes? Did they pay taxes? And if they paid taxes, do they have an expectation for their community to be sound and safe? Is this appropriate? This is off of 41st Street near the utility plant. So we went to 41st, 43rd, 45th, and 49th. And I feel like that Indian that was on the horse with the tear going down his cheek of sadness and disappointment. This is 41st Street, right there by that utility plant off of 31st and 41st. Some were replaced with, maybe that's about 50 years old, but one of the things that we expected is simple monthly or quarterly or even biannual maintenance, repairs, and new improvement, as you can see from the Gifford structure. Now this right here is 49th Street, where Taylor Point, or used to be Victory Park. That was one of the areas that had a guardrail, but if you look at the culvert, you're like, wow, is this area safe for the children? Because the foundation actually was leaning inward, and then it had a lot of infrastructural stress cracks. Is that area safe? The galvanized pipe was right up into the concrete bags. I have a lot of pictures on 3 junk drives, and we spent, I guess, a little over 30 days photographing. Looking at the flow of the water, that's a culvert that doesn't have a bottom. It's gone. How long does it take for a galvanized steel pipe of that magnitude to erode? 60 years, 70 years, 80 years. I counted up 10 pipes, I think they were like 5 or 6 feet pipes in height, and then the diameter, oh my God, that had no bottoms and some had no sides. How long does it take to erode those types of pipes? Those are not small pipes, galvanized steel. That's Taylor Point or Victory Park. That's an area where a lot of children. We looked at the culverts that were connected to the embankment. Some of those where the pipe extended out, it had no bottom, so the water just eroded the embankment, leaving the area unsafe. Then we looked at a lot of the canals. The water just was sitting there. Now we go to mosquito control, diseases. It's not flowing. What's holding up the pipes? We went to a lot of areas where weeds, trash, debris, and it wasn't just yesterday. The water couldn't flow. Then I went into a residential area off of 49th Street, and I says, let's look at the culverts in the residential area. So we started at the canal on 49th Street, and then we went to the culvert pipe that was right on the back of the embankment, and we looked further into the neighborhood. Trees had grown up, probably 30-year-old trees. So the pipes further into the neighborhoods were blocked. We have a lot of flooding, like yesterday, was it Saturday and Sunday? We had flooding in Gifford. It wasn't that big type of rain. Why do we have a lot of flooding in Gifford? That's a possibility. So we're looking at the infrastructure. It's not enough for me to say, commissioners, we got a problem. But commissioners, look at this. There's one area, there's actually 4 areas off of 49th Street. And to me, it's an emergency, because the culvert, not only is it cracked. It's missing a bottom, but the, whatever you call the structure that supports as the car go, I call it the interchange. When they go across and then they turn left or right to go onto 49th Street, those structures are cracked, that, right there. That doesn't even have a topper. I call it a topper. And I'm not an engineer. I'm a reporter. I'm a correspondent. Well, anyway, this right there, that's off of 35th Street, right across the street from the fire department. And that also, you could see the steel beams. I think I got the other jump drive. You could see the steel beams at the bottom of the structure, and then right over there is where the cars come across. This area is going to cave in. It's going to collapse. At least 4 areas are going to collapse. Now, when we talk about stewardship and the spending, now you all have that charge, and the community voted for you all for that charge. I look at on 45th Street, oh, that's one, but there's another one that has, I think you can see that, there's no bottom in that, but there's one that's just, but let me go back to the point. One of the things, the charge that's in your hands, you know, we just did the 45th Street Dubose Cemetery, and we repurposed that into a Martin Luther King Park. And I think I learned last year that it was a total of $450,000, maybe it was more. And when we look at that, when we compare what is the emergency, a park, vice the infrastructure, where does that money need to go first? To the cemetery or to the infrastructure? And right now, like I was saying 2 weeks ago, 45th Street is closed. They're closing that in order to improve the beautification and so forth. We have a lot of traffic on 49th Street, additional traffic, with 4 of those areas getting ready to collapse based on the stress fractures. That means it's actually cracked and it's going across, and it's not cracked at the top, it's cracked all the way down to the bottom. And the steel beams are coming out not only at the top, but at the bottom. If you get the other jump drive, you can see more details. Yes. And it's pretty bad. So when we talk about, you know, I had no decision in it, but to utilize all of that money when we need that money here, who's to say someone picking up their child from Gifford Middle goes across that interchange off of 49th Street and collapse? And when it could have, oh my goodness, that's one of the areas, but that's a nice image. We have some worse than that. See what I'm saying? The stress fracture, and then the pipe is actually shifted from the structure. There's no bottom. We have some worse than that. 4 of them that just, the alarm is just going off. Bling, 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 bling. I mean, it's sounding really bad because it could collapse at any day now. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but we have a problem, gentlemen, and I need your help. I don't need your help next year, 2018. I need your help today, because, I mean, if it collapsed and somebody's coming off the beach with their little child, it's a big lawsuit, and it's preventable. It makes me sad when I look at those pictures. But I know we have a team of experts, and I know Mr. Beard is getting ready to retire, and I know in his heart that he wants to leave a legacy, that he left that area in an area that, you know, even though he's been here, what, 30 years? 30? 30. Oh my God, 35 years. So you've seen the ups and downs of that area, but that's dangerous. That's dangerous.
Yeah, Ms. Scott, I've had Rich here assessing your area. So when you get through, meet with Rich, and you can call him at any time, and he'll go out and assess. Rich is going to be our new Public Works Director, and Rich has been assessing your area and looking at what we're going to replace, that inventory, what needs to be replaced. In fact, we're doing it countywide. Realize that we're assessing it, everything. So when you come across these things, please he's going to give you his business card. Feel free to contact him or Chris Moore, and they'll be glad to assist you.
Yeah, I did stop down to see Chris Moore about 3 weeks ago, and he told me he was retiring. But we have a new gentleman, and we should be bosom buddies because this is pretty bad. So I have 3 jump drives, and like I told you a couple of weeks ago, I was happy to share the pictures, but no one, and so
We gave them to Rich. I asked, you sent the pictures in, we gave them to Rich, and he went out and looked at all these, and he's assessing them and coming back with the report and going to replace, actually, we're going to replace several culverts in the Gifford area.
Okay. Okay, are we going to get the concrete prefab, or are we getting more of the galvanized that are eroding?
I think you need to talk to Rich. He's our engineer, and he will be the one making that decision. He'll be able to tell you which individual wants what he's going to do.
Okay. I just feel sad about, what I had to present to you, but it is what it is. Okay. All right. I'll like to get back with you and follow up with your public works engineer, traffic engineer. What's his title?
Rich is going to be our new Public Works Director.
Okay.
And he'd be glad to assist you with Chris Morrow, he's going to take over from Chris when Chris retires in a couple of months. And so if you'll get with Rich, he'll be glad to assist you.
Well, I will be following up with the letter, and then also through the Public Safety Advisory Commission, Corporation of Gifford, Florida. We will be following through a letter, and then we're also going to CC this letter up the chain, because it's not enough that it's done internally, but this is pretty major. And some of the pipes probably 100 years, or at least to 1920. So I don't know if it's negligence, neglect, or what, but I need your urgency, and I need the commissioner's urgency to this area. Not just 45th Street, but 49th Street. And then there's areas off of 43rd Street that are in terrible condition. I have 3 jump drives, and please, I come before you. And I'll be coming back in a couple of weeks, but I will be forwarding a letter, and it is going to go further up.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scott. Next, we have a request to speak from Mr. Nolte.
So we'll be here for about 20 minutes. Okay.
Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Bob. David Nolte, 900 Royal Palm Place, Vero Beach, Florida.
Thank you.
A couple of things were said this morning that are simply not accurate. We need to set the record straight. I think, first of all, my good friend Laurel Kelly down in Martin County did not jump at the opportunity to do a study. She, in fact, informed them that of the pitfalls of the study and the that it's not, in fact, what property appraisers do. But she mentioned the fact that she didn't have the money in her budget to do it. And the county commission down there finally came along and put together, according to the newspaper, $60,000 for this study to be done. And she got together with the community, but she assured them that this work is predicting the future is simply not what a An appraiser does. An appraiser is an historian. He looks at the past and tries to come up with values based on history. Secondly, we do cooperate with your local people. We, at every point we can. This young lady, Kate Cotner, you know Kate Cotner? Okay. Kate Cotner came to us early in May of 14 and asked for some information, and we put information together, which, according to what I think I heard Mr. Davis say, is very similar to what the information they put together in Martin County. We went into North County from 500 feet all the way to a mile, looking at sales and such. And the indications were at that time that there wasn't any radical shift because of All Aboard Florida. And by the way, there isn't anyone I've met who thinks All Aboard Florida is a good idea. It's a terrible idea. Man the choo-choo. However you want to say it, it's something that will be of no benefit that anyone who's ever talked with me has been able to point out. And I talked with the Lieutenant Governor a year ago.
Excuse me, Mr. Nolte, if you could address the board, we'd appreciate it.
I'm sorry. I talked with the Lieutenant Governor a year ago and some others up in Tallahassee and realized that this deal was signed, sealed, and almost delivered. If they could have sold the bonds, it would have been delivered. That's the only holdup. In fact, the people in Tallahassee denied any knowledge of it until lengthy discussions, and they finally admitted that it was a basically done deal. And secondly, or thirdly, fourthly, fifthly, whatever it is, I'd like to point out again that we send out a little sheet with the trim notice. This sheet with the trim notice carefully explains the local taxing, how it works. And unless you're at your millage cap, there is no loss in tax revenue. You set your budget anywhere you want, and unless you're held down by the millage cap, you can levy that millage. It's been here. It's on 90% of the trim notices around the state, and you really need to read it and understand it. I've had long talks with Wesley about it. He simply doesn't understand it, and I wish I knew how to get through. And that's about it. I just wanted to be sure you knew that we cooperate. We've done the things that needed to be done, but we don't have authority to spend taxpayers' money on studies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nolte.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up is public notice items, and I'll let Mr. Reingold, if he would, read a notice of continued public hearing, April 5th, 2016.
Thank you, Chair. To the full board, those in the audience and those watching at home, we have a notice of a continued public hearing. This will be a public hearing that will be held on April 5th, 2016. This is MPM 7 LP request to rezone plus or minus 12.39 acres located east of Old Dixie Highway, north of 77th Street, and west of US Highway 1 from CL, Limited Commercial District, to CH, Heavy Commercial District, and also to request to rezone plus or minus 2.79 acres located approximately 1,450 feet north of 77th Street, east of Old Dixie Highway, and west of US Highway 1 from RMH6, Residential Mobile Home District, up to 6 units per acre, to CL Limited Commercial District. This will be quasi-judicial in nature, and again, this will be heard on April 5th, 2016. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reingold. Next up is departmental
Mr. Chair,
matter.
we have a 10-minute break.
Okay, we will go and adjourn for 10 minutes. And move on to the consideration of agency report for FP&L's proposed Okeechobee Clean Energy Center.
Mr. Chairman, I know they're not on the agenda, but I was approached by by Ms. Fry and Ms. Austin. They would like to say a few words, but it's Chairman's discretion.
Is this, what's it in reference to?
I imagine all aboard Florida, I guess. Okay, I don't know. I didn't go that far.
Mr. Chairman, I was approached too during the break, and several individuals had made requests to speak. Unfortunately, we did not get that information at the time, and
if you want to speak, come on up, but I'd request that it have nothing to do with the Davis-Nolte interchange.
That's the new one in southern Brevard County.
Right.
And there were others. This is factual, not political.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Phyllis Fry, 275 Date Palm Road. I'm here to speak about the property issues and the negative impacts of all aboard.
Ms. Fry, that's what I asked you not to speak on today. I mean, basically, there seems to be a political theater going on, which disrupts the meeting, and I'd rather not let this board digress into just political activity. We have a business meeting, so I'd request then if you want to speak on this, that you go through the public speaking channels that you're aware of and come back at another meeting.
I would certainly be happy to do that, and I, sorry if I misunderstood what the purpose of public comment is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on something that is not dealing with the political theater we saw earlier today? Thank you. Then we'll go on to the consideration of agency report for FP&L's proposed Okeechobee Clean Energy Center.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, for the record, Stan Bowling, County Community Development Director, and this is regarding a project that is located in Okeechobee County, but also is accessed through Indian River County. A few items I would like to show on the PowerPoint here. One is the location of the site, and this is actually a slide from Florida Power and Light. What is proposed is a 1,600 megawatt power plant, which means it's a major power plant and subject to a specific state process. The plant itself is located on the border of the northeast Okeechobee County boundary and Indian River County, approximately a little over a mile west of 20 Mile Bend and a little more than a mile south of it, between the State Road 60 and the turnpike itself. This is an aerial showing a little more context of the site. Again, this is State Road 60 and 60 Mile Bend here, 20 miles west of 43rd Avenue. And the county border is this rectangle here. And the project site, approximately 2,000 acres, a portion of it is where the power plant is proposed to go. And there is an existing private access road that connects to State Road 60, all within Indian River County, and that is the access to the site itself. And this is essentially a sort of a site layout from FP&L's application, again showing the footprint of the power plant kind of in the northern portion of their overall holdings, which is this entire rectangle here, and again the access through Indian River County to State Road 60 on that particular map. Now there is a Florida Chapter 403 Power Plant Siting Act that takes charge and governs the process for their review and approval. And DEP, Florida DEP, manages the site certification process, so we've been in coordination with them, and they've been in coordination with Indian River County staff as well. The process includes a public outreach component, a completeness review that's somewhat like a DRI process, also an agency report, which is the item before you all this morning. There will be in the future an administrative law judge certification hearing and a recommended order, and then eventually Governor and Cabinet will have final review and approval. The final certification order is what governs the project, and again there are some similarities to DRI, Development of Regional Impact, development order, but this final certification order is really the end game here. A few highlights from the process itself. Last May, FP&L, as the applicant, sent surrounding property owner notice within 5 miles of the site. On June 1st, there was their open house at the Richardson Center, and I know a number of the board members attended that. In September, they submitted their formal certification application. They, of course, had met and sort of had pre-application conferences with staff before that. In October, Indian River County issued comments, and there were comments from other agencies as well. Later, FP&L submitted responses, and that's included in your backup. In November and December, Indian River County issued its land use consistency and completeness determinations with respect to the application. You all took a look at an initial draft agency report at your March 1st meeting. Staff's taken some actions based on direction, which I'll go into in a moment. And today's meeting, you're really tasked with approving or modifying the proposed agency report. We do need to file that with DEP by April 6th. That's our deadline for the agency report. June 20th, the administrative law judge site certification hearing is scheduled to be held in Okeechobee. And then currently the schedule is October 11th, 2016 for the siting board hearing, which would be final action, and presumably a final site certification order would come from that. Now, with respect to the agency report, and again, with this process, this is the first and only time that I'm aware we've had this process and been involved in Indian River County. So we're not experts at all in the process, and we have relied upon DEP quite a bit for guidance. And FP&L representatives have been helpful as well, because they've been through this a number of times. But in terms of the agency report and samples we got from DEP, we've prepared an agency report. It's much like a letter. We lay out the county's position and its basis for any concerns or recommendations on various issues. And the recommendations that we include in the agency report need to be within Indian River County's authority and jurisdiction. There's also, again, anything that the applicant agrees to can also be in the condition. And DEP has stressed in their guidance it's easier if FP&L does agree to the condition. It's almost a fait accompli in that case if in terms of getting that into the final certification order. And so that's kind of been the process up to this point. 4 issues have been identified by staff in terms of impacts on the county. Again, the footprint of the plant entirely within Okeechobee County, but access through Indian River County to State Road 60. We looked at traffic impacts, impact fees, emergency services impacts, and water source or supply impacts. And I'd like to take a few moments now and finish out and give a few details on each of those areas and staff's recommendation. And Mr. Chairman, we can go from there. I will say I know that there are representatives from FP&L here as well this morning. With respect to traffic impacts, again, the project access is only through Indian River County, and there's a private road from the plant site to State Road 60. The application included a traffic study looking at construction and operations traffic and the impacts of that. We anticipate construction traffic will actually be more significant than ongoing operations, 650 workers versus maybe 30 workers during the plant operation. Indian River County, our 952 turn lane threshold requirements, they're more stringent than the state requirements. They did not trip any DOT requirements, but they did trip a turn lane requirement under our code and our standards. Our Public Works and Traffic Engineering looked at that, and FP&L has agreed to an eastbound right turn lane at the State Road 60 project access road, and that is a condition that's proposed in the agency report. With respect to impact fees, since there will be traffic impacts on the county road system, like any other project, we believe that traffic impact fees should be paid. And in terms of the traffic impact fee amount, it's not that much. We don't have a category for power plants, but we looked at the area, the administration building that will house employees, and applied the manufacturing rate. It's going to come out to around $25,000. Now, in this case, the traffic impact fee is offset by franchise agreement fee revenue cap, and FP&L has agreed to the traffic impact fee condition. We just wanted to make you aware of those components.
Stan, I understand
Yes.
that. It's just a matter of where you put the $25,000 into what pot?
It is essentially an accounting exercise,
Okay, so
but
it's
it gets it into the right place.
It's a bookkeeping deal. FP&L isn't paying any more one way or the other.
That's overall net revenues will not change. That's my understanding.
Thanks.
Now, with respect to emergency services, and again, the last 2 items here, emergency services and water supply, a few more items I wanted to bring to your attention. One is, again, Okeechobee County has jurisdiction and responsibility in terms of the plant location and providing emergency services. Indian River County is under a mutual aid agreement and has responsibilities, but those are limited. Again, our own Emergency Services Director, John Keene, can speak to that with expertise. Indian River County does have closer fire stations and more resources nearer to the project site in terms of travel distance than Okeechobee County. That's been reflected in the proposed agency report. Staff has coordinated with Okeechobee County and FP&L and stressed the limited response under mutual aid agreement. Florida Power and Light has agreed to reimburse Indian River County for reimbursables in case of a prolonged special event like a hazmat event. That's in the recommended condition. And again, FP&L has agreed to that. And the agency report also refers to Indian River County's reliance on the commitments of Okeechobee County because, that is their responsibility. Under water source and supply, a couple of things that I wanted to say, and let me just make one point on emergency services before I go to this. At the March 1st meeting, the Board of County Commissioners asked staff to get information from Okeechobee County regarding certain capabilities for emergency services, and Bill DeBrawl and John King went down and met with officials at Okeechobee County, made a request, and got information in writing from their public safety director, and that's included in your backup and will be attached to the agency report. Now, regarding water source and supply, the project will be pulling on average 9 million gallons per day from the upper Florida aquifer. That's also the same source for Indian River County utilities and to some extent City of Vero Beach utilities, and our own utility services departments made a lot of comments and gotten a lot of information on that particular aspect. They've been quite involved in that, and had extensive comments through the process, and FP&L responded. Ultimately, St. John's does have the jurisdiction over water supply and allocation. We discussed that back on March 1st. I did also want to just point out that FP&L has twice appeared before the Indian River County Soil and Water District Board. Staff has coordinated with FP&L and St. John's to add items to the St. John's recommended condition, and St. John's did take action on March 8th after your March 1st discussion on alternative water supply. And their condition, they have the ability to trigger an evaluation, FP&L evaluating a potential alternative water supply source for the project at any time and any number of times during the life of the project. Things were added at staff's request. One is that the source can be outside the St. Johns River Water Management District boundaries because actually a major portion of Okeechobee County is in South Florida Water Management District, so there could be an alternative water supply source near the project that's not actually in St. John's. That's covered. Indian River County notice of St. John's notice and the evaluation report, we would make sure we get in the loop on that. Also, language has been added that FP&L must make a good faith effort and that the alternative water supplies include surface water supplies. There's also been added a trigger condition that if by the end of 2021 St. John's hasn't required a reevaluation of alternative water supply sources, that FP&L must identify and evaluate the alternative. So that'll happen regardless, automatically, so to speak. And the agency report itself also references that Indian River County is relying on St. John's water supply condition to be put in the certification order and relying on good faith implementation of that condition. Staff's recommendation is that the board authorize submittal of the agency report that's in your backup with any changes that you deem necessary. And I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowen. Any questions?
Yes, I do. Stan, in illustrating what really the biggest concern of the application is, do you have the slides loaded walking through the kind of the PowerPoint that's in the back? Do you have that so those at home can see the distance traveled and why? And based on the history, I see this as such a concern to how do we craft our response paragraph. In going through and talking with a number of agencies, and I've tried not to bring in directly our emergency services people because I don't want to see as one agency being pitted against another. So I've tried to get some information outside without, trying to avoid that. This issue is not being driven by emergency services at all. It's not being driven by Florida Power and Light. Florida Power and Light has been given answers to questions, and they as a business should rely on the answers that they're given. So my questions and concerns and issues I'll bring up today are not anything negative against Florida Power and Light. I'm very supportive of the project, and I think it's will be an enhancement to the entire region. But when you take a industrial facility and you look at the response protocol from a number of agencies around the state, when you read what would they send at the point of a alarm, smell of smoke, chemical issue for that type of facility, or even scaling it down, a smaller facility, the initial response, according to these agencies, is 3 engines, a battalion chief, and a medic unit. The entire, and again, not faulting Okeechobee, they're in a very rural environment. That initial response is greater than the entire capability of the entire department that Okeechobee has. And again, that's, you can't build things in advance of before the demand's there. But when you look at the distance to their closest station is 30 miles away. And then the second station 42 miles away, and the third station 46 miles away. That's just a lot of asphalt to cover driving to a scene. In comparison, when you look at, if you want to, here's the, or back up one. This is from the Okeechobee County's website, the information that we've determined and used in these discussion points. So maybe there's something different or something that's on the horizon. But if you take the stated personnel that's on duty full time, it becomes, and using that initial response protocol, there's not enough people if the entire department went, and some of them are coming 46 miles away, which is just a great distance. Go on to the next slide. And then looking at our proximity to the state, or to the site, 18 miles, still a great distance, but much shorter than the other option, Okeechobee 4. And the next slide for 10, 20 miles, and then the third. This would be if this was in our county, this is what we would respond, and we have adequate personnel plus to cover the minimum response requirement based on the personnel we have on staff. What I see, and this is something has been a concern of mine even before the Okeechobee Energy Center comes up, is the number of times that the mutual aid agreement has been put into effect. And if you read how that's supposed to operate, the county that the incident takes place in needs to arrive on scene and then call for help. In this case, as recent as I think it was March the 7th, was the most recent call for mutual aid. I'm one of these people that listens to 50 radio all the time, and I'm always flagging things for tapes to go back and listen to or request dispatching records. That it appeared to be at point of dispatch from Okeechobee. They initiated the mutual aid at the same time they were dispatched. That's not mutual aid. My understanding is they're supposed to respond, get there and say, hey, we need help, and then call for help. Not Okeechobee has a call that's really closer to us and call mutual aid, and we would traditionally always get there earlier. So that's been just an ongoing concern of mine. In Okeechobee, you actually have to travel through Okeechobee, Osceola, Indian River back to get into Okeechobee. And that's, the reality is when you look at it, who should really provide protection? If you're looking at this and it was a blank state without lines, we obviously would be the normal provider. The only catch is Okeechobee's getting the property tax revenue, which year one is estimated to be about $12 million, and that's based on the discounted formula with the tax abatement program Okeechobee put into effect. Also, you have the taxing authority, and I'm not exactly sure how this works in Okeechobee. I work with Jason Brown, and we tried to wrap our heads around how much additional fire EMS taxing authority amount would be charged to Florida Power and Light, and I used the 2 largest property taxpayers in Okeechobee. Maybe not the largest, but the Okeechobee Hospital has a taxing authority millage of 0.353. the Campground of America has a multiplier of 0.161, a 300% swing in the variation. That's another source of revenue, they'll have to provide services. What I don't want to see, if something happens, we want to go because if there's injured people or there's an active emergency situation, we need to be there to help. The problem is being ready, having our people ready, having our people trained. A reimbursement fee doesn't rotate all of our staff through the facility to become trained and proficient in understanding what's the site like. Last thing you want to do is show up to some place that you've never been to before. So a reimbursement, if we go for an, quote, extended period, is not a viable solution. And my understanding as this goes forward to the administrative law judge, we sort of get one bite at the apple. I'd rather put a number of things in that they may toss out, but again, it's trying to raise the concern of really the reality of if this was a DRI, there would be a forced solution, a forced agreement, but this is not, we don't have DRIs anymore, so this administrative law judge review is the process. I think when we asked for some information, what I was hoping we would hear back is that based on the property tax revenue, Okeechobee is going to be adding a station or complementing additional equipment, hiring 5 extra people per shift, or some plan that you go, hey, they've got it, they've got the revenue coming in, they're going to spend a portion of that on services, they've got it figured out. And I don't think that piece of information, unless any of you can tell me we've received anything definitive like that. Nope. So again, without them having a plan, I see us just sort of getting sucked into the response side of things. And how do we craft that paragraph? And I'm more than happy to help them, but we just have to be paid. Not paid when we go, because you have to be paid to be ready to go. I don't want to put our personnel in a place that they're not familiar with, don't have the right equipment or the right whatever they need to be safe if they go out there. And all that has a cost, and any River County residents shouldn't bore it shouldn't bore 1 penny to that, because somebody's already paying the bill for those services to be provided. One interesting fact from 2013, but it started in 2011, is when in Martin County and St. Lucie County had a very similar issue. The community was the Beau Rivage community, as well as about 500 residential areas. They were in St. Lucie County, but you could only get to it through roads in Martin County. And in their case, they were concerned because it took 4 miles to drive in St. Lucie County to get around to get back into their home county again. We're looking at 15 miles from the site to get back to Okeechobee, so much greater distance. In this particular case where Martin County annexed a portion of St. Lucie County, Senator Joe Degron's, one of his concerns was he supports the annexation because of public safety concerns and the additional response time, or the unacceptable response time for fire and EMS services for that area, that would help rectify that. That I see as sort of I don't want to say the last option that's out there, but if there's not a commitment from Okeechobee to spend some of their property tax revenue, and the likelihood of us being drawn into the service provider side without compensation because of this extended period clause, I see as a loser. This is a lose-lose situation for our taxpayers, and I don't want to have to tell them, oh, we couldn't come to your place because, and it is a very infrequent event. I know Florida Power & Light said during construction for the 3-year period, there's an average of 6 responses a year. That doesn't sound like much unless you're one of the 6 in that year, then it becomes a very important number to you. Once operational, Florida Power & Light had mentioned 3 responses a year. So these are not if it might happen. We know based on their historical information that it's a very limited possibility, but historically they know it's 6 a year during construction, 3 a year operational. So somebody needs to come up with a plan and pay for it, but it can't be any River County taxpayers. We're more than happy to help with this, but there has to be, I know like in a automatic aid, John? Automatic aid agreements, there would be a compensation plan, and with that, a level of commitment that we would make based on the cost we would be receiving. We would provide some type of response service for that. So how we have to go through the writing of this paragraph for the judge review, I think is, we have to really think through, because once it's done, I don't think you ever get to come back to that judge again. Once the permit's issued, it's over. So if there's anything else that staff would like to mention or add or put with it?
To reinforce what the Commissioner Zork said, I mean, I don't know the EMS system as well as Commissioner Zork, but reading the backup, it seems like first that, again, limited backup, but an understanding, as Commissioner Zork did, that Okeechobee is a rural county, their EMS services are certainly insufficient to actually service the plant. That seems clear. And it seems that there's going to be a significant burden on the Indian River County EMS system. That seems clear. So I would support where Commissioner Zork is going for the idea that we actually get some support for training for what is going to be a very probable occurrence, us going to service the power plant. So if Commissioner Zork doesn't know how to word it, I certainly don't know how to word it. But
Well,
I think the idea
I
is in the
think
right place.
with what we have said today, and I know there's things that the administrative law judge may go, you don't have jurisdiction. And I get the procedural part of that, but somewhere in the process, somebody's got to go, they don't have jurisdiction, but man, there's a really good point here that we need to address. And I don't know how do we...
There's a life and safety issue. I mean, that's what the issue is. So it shouldn't be determined by some point of who has jurisdiction or not. I mean, there's still an overriding concern for the health, safety, and welfare, and that concern should rise to every level of government, including the administrative law judge. So hopefully he can recognize that. Commissioner Fletcher was waiting.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And again, we have some other scenarios that have taken place that have shown us what type of dependency could be placed upon our resources. Some 26 miles out, there is a parcel of real estate that we respond to here in Indian River County. And it does take some time to get there. And we have enjoyed great mutual aid, out of jurisdiction mutual aid by Osceola and by Okeechobee as well. I believe you know the area we're talking of, Chief. It does take some time to get out there. They have provided basic life support, and that's where it ends. If there's anything further, we will take over the scenario and get there in a timely fashion as well. But 26 miles, when the other jurisdictions are about a half a mile away, it's a matter of life safety, and that has been with law enforcement and fire services and emergency medical services as well. There are countless scenarios that have happened out by the turnpike that was our jurisdiction. And I can understand that, but as Stan pointed out, any prolonged event, sustained event, I'd like us to define what that is, because quite certainly is that the word indicates that we will have tremendous amount of resources there, but I also believe that anything happens at the plant other than an accident, a minor accident, or someone sustaining a heart attack, or a vehicle crash that requires our services or requires the services of another agency, that would be temporary in nature. But I believe that any incident at the plant might be of significant value and require much of our resources. Could you elaborate upon what the understanding is with a prolonged event?
For the record, my name is John King, Emergency Services Director and also Fire Chief. I have met with the Public Safety Director and Fire Chief from Okeechobee County. He commits that he has resources to handle any emergency out there. And under mutual aid, our initial response, if it was a medical type call, it'll be 1 ambulance and 2 people. And if it's a fire rescue type call, it'll be 1 engine and 3 people. That's our first assignment for a mutual aid. Anything he is, he believes he has resources to handle anything larger, a larger scale event out there.
Now, Chief, could we get to the scenario that additional resources will be requested, and would you be compelled to satisfy? In other words, I don't want to see our resources getting compromised. You have but 2 stations that are close enough to be able to respond in a timely fashion. Would we exhaust both those 2 stations and have to shift the rest of the services to the appropriate areas so that the people of Indian River County are properly served?
I think that I'd like to respond by saying that I think Commissioner Zork did a very good job saying this is not one fire rescue agency pitted against another fire rescue agency. And thank you for saying that, because the guys in Okeechobee, they're my friends. They do a very good job. The issue you're dealing with here, and the point that you raise, is that if we were to have a mutual aid, if that facility was in Indian River County, I would probably put 15 bodies at the scene for any type of an emergency, a serious emergency, other than just a minor injury. I think that if they had a significant event at that site, that Okeechobee would be obligated to try to do about the same. So it's a matter of managing resources, and you have to remember that that isn't the only event happening in your community. There's still going to be car accidents. There's still going to be other incidents that happen during the day. So a protracted event, I initially would send 1 unit, because it's not in my jurisdiction, and I'm not the primary agency.
And Chief, I just for the record, I prefaced my comments with some of my experiences as well. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you see another jurisdiction there, it is a very welcome sight. When you know that it took you quite a long time to get out there at 26 miles an hour under certain perils. So, no, I do appreciate the great relationship that you and the other departments have instilled, and I would not want to see that compromised. This is clearly about being able to properly serve another effort with the resources that we have and they have together, with the taxpayer in mind.
If I could follow up on that. Chief, you remember the Moorings fire?
Yes, sir.
How many men were at that event?
I had about 15 people at that
Okay,
event.
that's 15 for a fire at a 3-story building.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's nothing, it was major for our area, but nothing compared to this power plant. And that is, I think, more than the whole Okeechobee shift, based on the data we showed. So again, the idea that there are adequate resources, to me, just doesn't fly in the face of reality. And that's what we're dancing around.
Yes, sir.
That's the fact. I mean, we had a tank, there was a construction at the house next to mine. They tore down the house and we're putting up a new house. And there was a gas tank there, which the contractor nicked, and gas came out, which we didn't realize until all the contractors had gone home, and the emergency services responded to it. I know there was a battalion chief and probably 8 to 10 other people at that event. And being in the house next door, I was happy that everybody was there. So again, when we talk about a scale of scope, if there's an incident at a power plant like this, I would think that 15 people would probably prove to be very possibly inadequate. So again, I mean, we will be faced most probably with having to go out there, and it's our obligation to make sure that our men are trained for the event, which, as I understand it, the way this is going, they won't necessarily be trained for specifically this event. So I think that seems to be the issue we're faced with, and despite the other documentation or everything, I mean, so far, I don't think we've heard what meets the reality as we see it. And we would like that document to reflect that in some way.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, on, looking at again, these are the estimated property tax values that we came up with going through a couple exercises, 12 million plus first-year property taxes, an unsure amount of the taxing authority district for Okeechobee Fire EMS, so you're looking at $12 to $15 million. They could have said, based on this, when the plant becomes operational, we're going to fund, build, hire, train, equip, X. since they haven't done that and we have to surrender our comments and our rights to what we're agreeing to today, knowing that the administrative judge may say we don't have jurisdiction, but I'd like to see language that would include a fee-based automatic aid. We'd have to figure out how that would work. Also knowing that if the judge takes that out, Stan or Bill, I'm not sure which you're more familiar with this process. If the judge takes it out, do they come back to us and say, well, you have to come up with a different alternative? Or how do they bring that scenario back? Have either of you gone through that, or Dylan? It's kind of, since we don't have DRIs anymore, we know how that worked. This is different. I know I haven't been around one.
No, I would not. I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how it would work. My best guess would be that the administrative law judge would make a recommendation concerning that, and whether or not that would be upheld by the governor and the cabinet is up to that body.
And if I could respond, again, my guidance from DEP is that we either have to point to our authority and our jurisdiction as Indian River County, or to something that FP&L agrees to. And I think we have representatives here from FP&L, you need to hear from them as to what they can agree to. I believe what they can agree to is what we've structured, what we've proposed. And if you want more than that, I think it would be appropriate to ask them if, what they would agree to. Because that's the guidance I've been given by DEP. We point to something that's, we have jurisdiction, or to an agreement we've worked out with FP&L.
And without them coming up, and they're free to come up and say that, since they've been told it's taken care of, they wouldn't ask for anything else. They're taking that decision, but based on the information that we've put together from what from our visit to Okeechobee and what we have, what they say they're going to do, and maybe the fellow from I'm guessing from Okeechobee because I don't recognize him as one of our what I call the white shirts in the audience today, unless there's when we requested documents, if there was something we didn't request that would really say what the plan is, would the representative from Okeechobee Fire EMS want to come up, or here's somebody coming up.
Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. Jackie Kingston, 700 Universe Boulevard, Juneau Beach, 33408. I am the manager responsible for the development of the Okeechobee Clean Energy Center site. And I just want to bring a few items to your attention, and then I'm going to turn it over to Michael Tamero to go through the process and answer a few of the questions that you had procedurally about the certification hearing process. Regarding hazmat response, as I've mentioned to you all before, and I'll just reiterate again, we have full confidence in Okeechobee County based on the information that they have told us and provided to date that they would be able to provide an adequate level of service to support our needs at the site. This includes their existing facilities and staff, plus some additional plans that they have for the future now that they better understand the design of the plant and what we would anticipate for emergency service response needs. Also, with regards to hazardous material response, Okeechobee County is also planning on relying on other counties within the Treasure Coast Mutual Aid Agreement area, including St. Lucie County and Martin County, to assist with responding. So it wouldn't just be Indian River County that would be having to provide 100% support to Okeechobee County. There are other counties in the region that would be expected to also provide support if and when that was needed.
So ma'am, how close is the closest St. Lucie Fire Department? How many miles?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd have to defer that
Okay, how many miles
to
from
somebody
Martin
else.
County?
I'm sorry?
How many miles for the closest Martin County Fire Department?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Okay, but it's significantly more than, about 30 and 50. I mean, again, probably more than that. So again, we're trying to deal with reality, and the fact that there are signed agreements or anything is immaterial if the support can't get there in a timely fashion. And when you're 50 miles away, you're really sort of outside of the game at this point.
They're also planning on relying on Osceola County, that is also much closer. With regards to St. Lucie County and Martin County, they specifically have the hazardous material response teams in the unlikely event of a hazardous material spill.
And what part of the county
otherwise, it would be
those-
Osceola County.
What part of the county are those teams?
I'd have to defer that to the gentleman from Indian River County.
The
or
one
from
in Osceola
Okeechobee.
County probably is going to be Kenansville.
Right.
That's going to be the closest one right there.
Well, she said they had the hazmat in St. Lucie and Martin County. I don't recall her saying that they had a hazmat in
I'm just answering which one was closest.
In Osceola County, at Station 57, they have brush trucks, they have a fire truck. and
Is
they
that
have an ambulance.
Keansville?
They don't have any hazmat at that site.
Yeah.
Their hazmat is more downtown near St. Cloud.
That would make sense.
About 60 miles away, if or greater.
Chief, those mileage estimates were roughly accurate, correct?
Yes.
Because it is some 20 somewhat miles out west to get to that location.
I would have to look at the map, but I would say that you're very close on the mileage.
Thank you.
Also, any training that we would be offering to Okeechobee County, which would be probably about twice a year, that would also be opened up to any of the surrounding counties to attend. That would be optional training for the surrounding counties, required for Okeechobee County.
A question on that, does that mean that you would pay for our people to become familiar with the site, or we could just show up and receive the training from your instructor?
We would not pay surrounding counties to receive the training. That would be something that you would pay for yourself if you had
why
to.
would I want to pay overtime and time off and to transition all of our department out there to become familiar with the site, as they are with every building that we have in our county? That's an expense our taxpayers are going to incur to train to benefit Okeechobee, who's getting $12 to $15 million a year in property tax.
Well, in that case, I'd encourage Indian River County to work with Okeechobee County and come to an agreement on something that was acceptable, if reimbursement was something that you feel is necessary in order to provide support if and when it's needed for our power plant. But again, that's not something that our project would be able to fund. Regarding the language that we came up with that Stan referred to before, we actually went back and forth for several weeks on that language, and I don't believe at this time we would be open to any changes to the language and the condition. I know you discussed maybe making some changes to the language in the agency report, but if we were to look at changing the actual language in the permit condition, I don't believe at this time we would be open to at least accepting today any changes to that language. But I did want to bring up Mike Tamaro to explain procedurally how we could move forward with that.
Well, and as he's coming up, and I don't mean this to sound mean, I don't really care if you don't like that we're going to change it. We're going to change it based on what's best for our residents and our taxpayers. If you object to the change, this is our county's response to the permitting process. And I think it's our responsibility to respond based on how it would affect our taxpayers, our level of service, and our people.
I understand.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Tamara. I'm an attorney with Florida Power and Light, 700 Universe Boulevard, Juneau Beach, Florida. There were a few comments about what would happen, what may happen in the future regarding the process. I just wanted to clear up. At this point, we don't expect a hearing. We have resolved all the agencies' concerns with all the agencies. We have agreed to conditions with all of the agencies. We are preparing for hearing. We're actually in witness preparation right now for the anticipation that we could get third party or some such thing. But the process is going to play out now. You will transmit your agency report with conditions. To the extent the conditions are not agreed upon with the applicant, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection will look at the citation that you cite for each condition that shows your authority under your regulatory program for imposing that condition. If that does not, in our view and the department's view, there is no sufficient authority for that condition, it will be rejected at that time by the department. If there is a hearing, and you all, if you so desired, could then trigger a hearing. You could cause a hearing to occur by petitioning as a party, and you have filed as a party. So you would have the ability to initiate that. But in that event only would there be a hearing. I didn't want there to be any. So if it gets to the administrative law judge, you're correct. What will happen then is there'll be a 4 or 5 day hearing depending on the length of time that's required to put on the testimony, because we'll have to go through the whole application. If there's a hearing, it won't be just this one issue. We'll have to go through the entire, from soup to nuts. And then at that point, there will be a recommended order, and then the final order would go to the to the governing cabinet. And we would all go up there and argue about this condition. So, I mean, I'd encourage you, we worked very strongly, very hard with your staff on this. We don't want to be in an adversarial position with the county. I think this is something that you and Okeechobee County need to work on. We fully expect Okeechobee, as was stated, to be able to provide sufficient services. Obviously, as a power plant, we would demand appropriate services. And if in the event we were not receiving that, then we would look around for other providers. But at this point, that's sort of where we are.
So taking your comment that you would demand Okeechobee to provide adequate response, you can see our point that they don't have enough manpower, equipment, and proximity to provide that. So have you demanded that they show you a plan, or are you just taking their word that they say that we have it covered?
Well, what you're putting us in the position of doing is suggesting that when Okeechobee says they're going to provide adequate service, that they're not telling us the truth. And we would not have a relationship with any local government where we would put this county or any other county where we would question their faith.
Right.
We are anticipating that they will provide, and their service people are here to offer any kind of advice. Do we know all of their plans? No, but we have faith in the local government that they will provide the services that are necessary.
Now, I would like to correct that. I mean, Okeechobee could be telling the truth as they see it. However, we view things differently on our experience. So their truth is not necessarily, in this case, our truth. And we have certain standards which are different from other communities. So we're trying to make sure that we reach the standards that we set for our community, which may in truth be different from Okeechobee County. But everything I've heard, and so far I think from the board, is that we haven't heard those things that get us up to that level where we need to be, regardless of Okeechobee's truth or regardless how you approach Okeechobee's truth. And that's the crux of it. I mean, your reality here is different from our reality here. And that's where we're butting, heads. That's
Exactly.
That's
well, we can't tell you. I mean, that's, again, this is, you can take that position with the county. Putting us in that position is even more difficult, because now it's just not that they're lying to us, but they're just not smart enough to know professionally what's going to be required, because they don't have the experience. We're not going to tell the county that.
No, you're missing what I mean by the truth. If you want to go on a vacation, you might say that $5,000 is enough for your vacation. I might say that $2,000 is enough for my vacation. Both of us are true. So Okeechobee could be telling the truth, we can be telling the truth, but our truth is different because our circumstances are different, and that's not what we're not recognizing here.
I
and
understand.
that's the crux. So again, no, I mean, you keep on trying to push off into other things and acting like Okeechobee's whatever, but that's not the case. It's that we have two different realities, two different approaches, and the one that we feel is necessary for the health, safety, and welfare of our community is simply not being addressed. And to throw it off to Okeechobee doesn't address it.
Councilor, at the risk of sounding a tad adversarial, when you hear comments like there are other jurisdictions that will rely upon, and I believe 30 miles is very conservative. I'm thinking it's closer to 40 miles. There's no direct route through the swamp to get to this site. It's got to be done on customary roadways. That might be congested because there might be another vehicle crash there. And then the other jurisdiction we're looking at was, well, they're 50 miles away. Have you ever driven an emergency response vehicle or responded and wanting to have in your heart that you wanted to help? No, I want to ask you that.
Again, I can't see it. As for
have you?
No, I have not.
Okay, and I don't believe the young lady who spoke did either.
As a company, we have some experience with our power plants. We've been in this business for a while. We know what's required.
But not in that area.
But no, this is our first power plant in Okeechobee, but we have them in rural
No, I meant
areas.
emergency response.
Yeah. So, it's very uncomfortable for us. The only point I'm making is, or will make, you can put what you need to in your agency report, what you feel is appropriate. In terms of conditions, any condition beyond what we have agreed to already is going to put us in a position where we're going to have to dispute that condition.
Well, it's my thought that it should be rather elaborate because, quite frankly, I believe that the existence of the plant, we're very excited that we will have a plant to be able to service the ultimate consumers. But this is a tremendous burden and has all of the potential of being a significant burden on our resources.
Thank you.
Bill, question for you. Do we, when you went to Okeechobee, because I saw the notes, but in asking them, did the question, do they have a expansion plan or a hiring forecasting plan or equipment purchase plan? Did they mention any of those types of reassurance that would make me feel more comfortable that they're thinking forward? I mean, we're in over 2 years in this process. It's not that they didn't have time to think about what a plan would be, where they could say, hey, you match, because if you ordered a fire truck today, when does it get here? It gets here over a year from now. So you have to have a plan to get equipment, manpower you can hire up and get trained in 3 to 6 months. Building a station can take you a year. So did they give you any of those assurances that they've planned out and costed out any type of system capacity increases?
The issue is not discussed, no.
No.
How much financial impact is this to the, as far as tax revenue, back to Okeechobee? Who mentioned that?
Oh, I did. Jason had come up with.
I think Jason's got a number.
Jason, do you have that number? I believe the basic rule of thumb is 2 and 2. $2 million for the building and $2 million to outfit it, and maybe perhaps they need their own fire station. That'll resolve everyone's issue. And Martin County can stay in Martin County, and St. Lucie can stay in St. Lucie, and we will not have a burden.
Good morning. For the record, Jason Brown, County Budget Director. We did perform an analysis some time ago of the estimated tax proceeds that Okeechobee County local governments would receive from the power plant. Our estimate was based on news accounts of a $1.2 billion facility. We have adjusted that downward to 85% of that value at about a $1 billion facility. Also, Okeechobee County has provided a tax abatement of 70% in the first year on that facility. So that brings the taxable value down to $308 million roughly. If you multiply that by the total millage rate in unincorporated Okeechobee County, that's 18 mills. It results in a $12 million total ad valorem tax payment.
And that's with the tax abatement?
That's with the
so
tax
it'll be
abatement.
much greater than that in the future?
That sounds like a pretty formidable emergency response center could be developed and eliminate all of our concerns, and perhaps can limit the amount of wording that goes back. I mean, I just don't get that. When you're building a plant of that size, most major corporations do have their own teams, and they work with the local jurisdiction. And I don't know how that wasn't discussed at all. Again, it's out of our jurisdiction, but it's going to greatly impact our jurisdiction.
I do want to
One
note that's
incident is all it's going to take.
Right. I do want to note that's the total for all of the agencies in Okeechobee County, so it wouldn't necessarily all be going to Okeechobee County itself. It's about 8.5 mills right now for Okeechobee, so it looks like a little less than half of that total would go to Okeechobee. Maybe.
Still could build a nice station.
And then there's the additional taxing authority revenue that there's no way to project. The low end, it's 1.6 million a year. High end, it's 3.6 million a year. So there's even that money alone, without the general revenue money, is enough to address it. But where we're at is since they haven't made a plan, we have to provide comments with nothing in writing from Okeechobee. So in writing this, if we were to put to me, the only way we can be paid a readiness fee by somebody, and if I was FP&L, I would tell Okeechobee they need to get off the checkbook and either hire up or pay us, one or the other. It's just probably the same number. But since that hasn't happened and these comments are due very soon, they could negotiate that out between here and I will make sure that we do ask for the hearing. Unless that document is provided, then we wouldn't ask for, that a funding plan on Okeechobee side or a automatic aid fee structure on our side. One or the other solves the problem. Is, again, I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I know procedurally we'll get up there and FP&L would mention, Judge, these are not in their statutory area, and they'll toss them out. And then, I would ask would Florida Power and Light be interested in voluntary annexation, moving the entire 2200 site out of Okeechobee into Indian River? And then we will gladly provide you all the service and then some. That solves the problem. So you have three solutions: a written plan from Okeechobee of how they're going to spend a portion of their money, a automatic aid fee structure that would include training, manpower, equipment, kind of like what we do at the airport. We charge the airport a fee to be able to respond for aircraft situations, and it's designated manpower and equipment, or the voluntary annexation. All three of those provide the answer. Stan, how would you write something like that in the comment, knowing, and do we have, Dylan, a question? And I see you're going through the books to look at. We don't probably have a administrative law judge comment expert on retainer, or do we?
No.
I mean, we have a lot of things, but we probably don't have that one.
The whole issue gets back to jurisdiction.
Right.
Since it is not within the county limits of Indian River County, can we force another county to spend their money according to conditions that we'd include?
But are we forcing them, or are we making comments?
I think we're concerned as a public safety for those that work at the plant. We're going to have to respond, and our residents. We're concerned about public safety. Very much so, and what it does when we have to take our units out of service, and we're the closest location, and everyone wants to ignore that.
We're going to lose
the
two
issue.
stations over this. Two stations are going to be tied up.
So with the administrative law side, if we put in a comment, then the judge, I'm trying to get somebody to wake up, and I should probably say that for 2 years in meeting with Florida Power and Light, we have talked about this issue every time, that at some point this is going to come to a head, and now it's come to a head with no answer from Okeechobee. We've gone to Okeechobee, we've talked to Okeechobee. Okeechobee has basically said that we're not, there's nothing in writing that says they're going to do anything. So we did what you suggested. We've already done that. We've done public records requests to see what they have done or haven't done. So I think we've exhausted our communication with Okeechobee. If we put in these comments, can Florida Power and Light go to Okeechobee and try to resolve the issue during the review process, and then we can come in after our comments are submitted and say, look, there's now a solution that's provided. I don't want to say rescind our comment or back it down.
We could withdraw it, yes.
You could withdraw so it gives them a period of time, and based on the calendar, these are due before the end of the month. The next timeline was, and I don't remember on the slide you had, the next step is
Right.
how many
The
months
agency
down the road?
report is due to DEP on April 6th.
Okay.
And then if there is an administrative law judge hearing, it's June 20th.
Okay, so between April 6th and June 20th, I don't see any fruitful benefit of us talking to Okeechobee anymore, because we just talked to them last week. That would give Florida Power and Light time to go to Okeechobee and say, look, you guys need to come up with a plan, and without lack of a plan, I would ask that we would be represented at that hearing to state the concerns. Now, they may say you're jurisdictionally not, it's not in your jurisdiction, but in somewhere, somebody's got to wake up and just go, it's not in their jurisdiction, but they have a really good point, and how do we fix that? And if this was a DRI, it would already been probably addressed. So with that, unless Dylan advises me differently, if we put in a motion to provide three solutions, and again, knowing all three of these, the judge could just say they don't apply, they're out, you're done, and then we're no worse off than we are today. I don't see where we'd be any worse off, because the reimbursement for extended period, to me, extended period is if you just drive out there and back, that's an hour and a half. That's an extended period, but I doubt that would qualify as an extended period for a response to the plant under Florida Power and Light's guidelines. So giving that up to me is not a biggie per se. And I'm trying to, which page is the original drafted paragraph 3 from the last meeting? Let me see if I can.
Are you in the final attachment, the actual letter?
Yeah, is it a numbered
Attachment 8?
page 2?
Page 2 is a discussion of emergency services, and then the condition is at the bottom of page 3.
But the scanned number, is that page 200 and? All right, so, okay, I didn't go far enough. Okay, sorry. There we go. Yeah, I just didn't flip to the last page. Let me just read this for a second. So the starting paragraph, the applicant licensee shall reimburse Indian River County for extraordinary emergency service expenses or services, including but not limited to expense and services related to hazardous materials consistent with Indian River County Emergency Services District. I think that alone leaves out your general response. That's very specific, so that.
Commissioner Zorc?
Yes, sir.
How about if we struck the word extraordinary and added the necessary training?
That would be a start. So then we would have people trained at someone else's expense, but the.
It would read, the applicant shall reimburse Indian River County for emergency services expenses or services including but not limited to expenses and services related to hazardous materials, events, and training consistent with Indian River County Emergency Services District ordinance.
One question on that. To my understanding, there's not one chemical used in the production of electricity that ranks as hazardous material. Like the propane, fuel oils, those are not considered hazardous.
There's a required reporting under SARA Title III or employee community right to know, but it's at a certain threshold. I've heard there's a 1 million gallon storage tank here. They would have to report that.
Would that be considered, but it's not hazardous material? It's a lot of material, but it's not considered. So in line with that, taking out extraordinary, but if it's related to hazardous material, if you changed it related to
hazardous material and whatever's in that tanker.
I have to ask the question, are we talking about an automatic aid or a mutual aid?
Well, that's my personal leaning is to automatic aid, because automatic aid with a fee means Okeechobee we would go to emergency services and say, what is the annual cost to staff an engine dedicated to that response? What's the the replacement cycle of that equipment? What would it cost to put it in a location? And then you would give us a one-time upfront fee and an ongoing fee, and then that would be their payment to us. Plus $1. I mean, it's got to be our cost plus, something.
In layman's terms, there's mutual aid and automatic aid.
Right.
Mutual aid means if we can respond and assist.
Oh, I think your mic might be off.
Mutual aid means that if we can respond and they call for help, we will send at least one unit to assist. Under automatic aid, there's an obligation, no matter what happens, we have to send crews to help, which means that I have to build additional capacity in my staffing plan every day if we're going to do an automatic aid. It's not just we go out there and we get reimbursed.
But you could put a price tag on that. Now, we don't have to do that today, but we could.
I'm sorry.
But we could quantify that if we said it's an automatic aid, and how can you put in the word with reimbursement of those expenses?
And level of automatic aid, is that one truck or is that 3 stations? We have to quantify those costs,
right,
what the expectation would be.
And I don't think we'd have to necessarily put the pencil to that at the moment. It's more of the wording of the sentence. Do you have an idea, Stan?
Just a point to make. I think a real key distinction here, as I understand it, is that going to automatic aid, it flips the responsibility. And do you want to do that or not? Or do you want to keep, it's in Okeechobee's jurisdiction, right, and the other alternative was trying to work with getting reimbursed for what mutual aid support we do wind up putting out there on the site. I think those are two,
So on
two
automatic
very
aid,
different things.
if you knew on automatic aid, the first response protocol was the 3 engines, battalion chief and that, and if that's what we'd have to provide, then that's what they'd have to pay for. And if that's whatever that comes out to be, and then the associated training to keep those people proficient. Under that scenario, I wouldn't see where they would be all reserve ready like we do with the airport. We would add to our system so that we would have them to go, and then we have 14 stations to pull from in total. So we would have others to pull from, but the price tag then would be the cost for that initial response. Not all of it would be reserve dedicated. It could be built into the fleet, I guess you'd say, or our system. So, application reimburse. So if you said the applicant licensee shall reimburse Indian River County for associated automatic aid expenses, again, knowing the first one to object to this will be Florida Power Line because they don't have jurisdiction, and then we're no worse off than we are today, but at least we're trying to, I'd either want to see Okeechobee spend the money or pay somebody to fix the problem for them. And since they're not, we have to step up.
I would caution you that under an automatic aid situation, I believe Okeechobee County would have to agree to the automatic aid.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that situation, Okeechobee County would be saying, Indian River County, okay, you have agreed to do this, you are going to handle the power plant. And I'm not, in our discussions, that was not a topic that was ever brought up.
In other words, we become the primary provider.
Correct.
At this point, I'd be satisfied with mutual aid, but as long as
Yes.
it included all our costs, which would include training. For instance, when FPL was up before, they said, well, Okeechobee is going to get some training, and if Indian River County wants to come, they can come, but it'd be at our cost. That type of training should be at the cost of
somebody else.
Okeechobee or
How far away from that is the actual language, in your opinion, as far as what needs to be said?
Well, I'm going to leave this to the staff, but I think if they took out the extraordinary and added the training to it, then I would think that would pretty much do it, but
And leave it as mutual aid.
yeah, leave it as mutual aid.
Because
Now-
any time we respond is going to be a prolonged event. This is not a 10-minute and a refusal and
basically-
we're done.
As I see the way I'd word it, it doesn't add, we're not making any profit for it. We just are fulfilling our obligation to our men, basically, that they get proper training for something like this if they are called to it, in the event that they're called to a situation which is got a reasonable degree of probability, and that the burden for it is not put on Indian River County taxpayers. So
There you go.
that would be where I'd try to get to.
I think we're all in agreement.
Under that discussion, since currently the reimbursement's only related to hazardous material, I would services related to any incident.
Fine, at the power plant.
Yes.
That-
Because hazardous material immediately comes off because there isn't any. So that,
Oh, yeah, we could strike hazardous material from, well, I'd like the hazardous material in there for whatever the training is necessary for it.
right.
I mean, and that,
And
I'm
then,
certainly not.
and then
kidding.
and then Commissioner Fletcher said any incidents.
Yeah,
Any and all
basically
instances.
to the plant.
Because I don't want to leave the room for, well, it wasn't deemed hazardous, so
Right.
we're not obligated at this point. Meanwhile, we've had 15 firefighters and emergency
So is
responders
that
tied
clear
up.
enough, Stan?
If I can just, I'm going to make a comment because a couple things. I know the board's talked about striking extraordinary emergency services expenses and just limiting it to emergency services expenses. I believe when staff had crafted that, it was based upon our language in 208.13, which is our ordinance code provision that specifically talks about extraordinary expenses. And thus, I think it might be helpful to continue that language. Now, I know what I'm hearing from the board is we want to get additional training or costs for payment or reimbursement for training. We could certainly include that as well as another condition or a sub-condition of related to extraordinary expenses. I've also heard about just simply responding to any event out at this site. I know under 125.01045, FPL is going to come back and say, well, under the statute, all we have to pay you for is your transportation and treatment costs provided by the emergency or the ambulance services, and we could include a reference to that statutory provision. So there's just some things I'm just kind of noting as we're moving through. I want to just make sure we're consistent with our code and our statute, because is what I've heard today is that they're gonna be really nitpicky on making sure we're citing to the right sites and statutes and codes and regulations, and I want to just be on point when we make these arguments.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a good point to keep what is crafted here as its own condition. FPL has agreed to it. It covers the reimbursables and that code section. I think in addition, what the discussion has been just recently here is that any services or training needed rendered under the mutual aid agreement, we get reimbursed for from FPL. And I think if that's a separate type of condition that we can word, then that's, this one is A, it's been agreed to. We can have the reimbursables, section handled, and then a second condition that you all want is we stay under mutual aid, but any services rendered, FPL reimburses us for, including training for hazardous.
But it's including training in advance?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding of what the direction the board is going at this point.
Yeah, just a little concerned because this could be even training could be a great expense. And I just want that articulated correctly. I don't want to see somebody say, come on down for training. Here's your box lunch, guys. Thanks for showing up. And yeah, of course, the classroom is free. I don't want it to cost the Indian River County taxpayers additional funding because this plant is going forward.
So training that meets the standards of Indian River County's Emergency Services Department?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be, and Mr. Chairman, John, if we have roughly 200 dual certified medic firefighters, that if we said over a year period, they said they're going to offer it twice a year. So that means you'd have to send half of the on-duty personnel, 100 people, at overtime on a day off to do it the one time a year they did, and then in 6 months later do the other half of the people. So that's another 100. So you're looking at, I mean, just from a payroll cost, Jason, what's the, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, our annual payroll benefits for emergency services is how much? I know it's $2 million a year per station roughly, but then there's other folks that needs to get. Right. So that's $30 million. If you divide it by a day and then times it by 1.5, that would, I just don't want them to be surprised when we say it's $1 million.
Well, we're getting, I think they'll work out the number before they do it, and we're getting a little weedy here.
Right.
And, when we get too weedy.
You're justifying option 4 for them is to build a fire station on site, and they save a whole lot of money.
But I think staff has enough clarity now to craft something which would be somewhat consistent with our existing statutes, but covering expenses as they occur and training to make sure that our men have what they need to go to any expected event out at the facility.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, maybe to help conclude, I think what we would do is under emergency services, condition A would be the condition as written, and then we would add B, which would be the applicant licensee shall reimburse Indian River County for services rendered under the mutual aid agreement, including training required to provide that service, or something to that effect.
And we may have a preamble to that, so in order to meet the health, safety, and welfare needs of, because that I think is sort of the basis of.
Right, and we might just tie back into 403.502 of the Florida statutes on that one, which specifically talks about the location and operation of electric power plants will produce minimal adverse effects on human health, the environment, the ecology, and the like. So hopefully if we tie in that human health.
And what I'll do is, at this point, I'll accept a motion, and then after a motion, if it's seconded, ask FP&L if they want to make any last comments. But I think we have.
Okay. Actually, more of a question. In putting out there, just doing a rough number, that's you're going to be north of $500,000 a year in training. That's, I don't want them to come back and go, Jay, we thought training was going to be 20 grand. It's not. It's a six-figure number. Just so there's no surprises by folks that's to get them through in the first year of operation, and then annually, there would be some type of smaller rotation, new people hired on, so it'd be a smaller number, but it's an expensive number, and I don't want them to be surprised later that it's big. Stan, just so when I read this motion, the paragraph B that we would add, the language that you had suggested would be, or I could just make the motion make a motion that under 3 emergency services that current paragraph 1 becomes paragraph A, and then paragraph B using the language you mentioned. If it was me, I'd put in a paragraph C, an automatic aid with a fee, or paragraph 4, voluntary annexation, but I might be pushing the envelope, but let Florida Power and Light know that that option, annexation, will always be welcome and is available, and all these things go away. So I'll redo it again without the fluff at the end. So motion that under the agreement, paragraph 3, emergency services, existing paragraph 1 would be labeled A, and then we would create a new paragraph B using the language that Stan read, and if you'd like to read that again as the record.
Sure. The applicant licensee shall reimburse Indian River County for emergency services rendered under the mutual aid agreement, including training required to provide that service. I think if we can be allowed some flexibility in final crafting of that, and then in probably the beginning of the letter, putting in the basis, kind of adding a paragraph or two to provide the basis for it.
That being the substance of the article, giving staff authority to craft it in the strongest way they possibly can, meeting our statutes and the state statutes.
Right.
Okay, there's a motion.
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Flesher. I'll ask if FP&L has any further discussion at this point.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Bart Getchins, Area External Affairs Manager, and we'd like to go on record to let you know that the reimbursable is something we do not agree to at this time.
We accept that, and thank you for coming and participating today.
Well, thank you for addressing this issue.
Thanks. So we have a...
Under discussion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't expect Florida Power and Light to be the responsible party. I think they, after this, should go to Okeechobee and say, figure this out before June 25th.
And for me, I'm not going to fault Okeechobee on this at all.
Right.
Or fault FP&L, but we have an obligation to our citizens and our personnel, which I believe we have to try to meet.
I agree.
And whether or not the other Florida agencies involved in this help us meet that obligation or not, I can't say. But I want us on record, which we've done, I think, very well today, to show that we had concerns and that we've got responsibilities which we're trying to meet. And we hope that everybody else involved in this reaches out to help us meet those needs.
Yes.
Mr. Rangel.
I've just got a clarification question on the motion. I know Commissioner Zork and a second from Commissioner Flesher on the emergency services condition. Would you like to wrap in the rest of the report and the other conditions with that motion, or were you anticipating that as a separate motion?
Well, why don't we just go ahead with this one and take the vote?
Okay,
And then
that's fine.
have
I just didn't want to drop the ball on the whole report.
Okay, so anybody from the public wish to speak on this? Being no one from the public, all in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. Now I'll accept the motion, which will hopefully include the amended Part 3.
So moved.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Zork. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. I'll go for Mr. Rangel and then Mr. Zork.
Okay.
Okay. Sure.
To the board, I've heard a lot of concerns about this the emergency services issue today. I've also heard from FPL today that they are strongly opposed, or at least opposed to the condition as presented by this board. We have now until April 6th to present this, and I assume this may force some sort of type of hearing in June that I know FPL was considering or hoping not to have. The serious question I have for you now is, as you know, Bill has done an amazing job on preparing this, working with staff and the like, but Bill and I aren't experts in certification, site certification law. I mean, is this the type of thing that you would like us to reach out to our outside counsel on and say, we'd like your assistance as we move forward with working on a condition, or is this something you'd like us to continue to work in-house to work with FPL and Okeechobee on? I just need to kind of understand the strategy aspect as we move forward with the rest of the certification process.
I have full faith in Councilor DeBrawl.
Mr. Chairman, that was going to be my follow-up question, is one, in preparation for the hearing as this item would be discussed, is to, as Florida Power and Light, they're a great company, they will have the best of the best experts to argue our point. And if Bill needs co-counsel on this to work with this so that we're adequately represented, I want to leave the door open for Bill to reach out if he needs to, or if not, if he doesn't feel that he needs to, but at least leave the door open and leave it up to Bill's discretion.
Okay, so it seems to me that we probably have time to see if Bill thinks other support is required, and he can probably come back to us in a timely fashion.
Correct.
So I think we just leave it to the county.
It's fine. I just wanted to make sure I raised that issue for consideration.
Anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you.